Hey everyone, just some context and information about the instructional video you're about to watch. My name is Gregory Marcus. I'm a project leader at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, which is the National Audiovisual Archive in the Netherlands, and I run Revive. Revive is an initiative by the archive that's been running for about 5 years and is purely focused on the reuse of archival material within electronic music. Over these 5 years, we've commissioned everything from industrial techno albums, massive cinematic ambient records, given countless workshops, commissioned dozens of new film scores for archival films. We made an AI for generative film scores, and we even introduced Morse code into modular synthesis. We've done a lot, and it's all thanks to the creativity and ingenuity that exists within electronic music. One of our most popular resources are our free sample packs of archival sounds. Special for ADE, in collaboration with Ableton and SAE Institute Amsterdam, our favorite instructor and big room techno producer Giacomo will run you through how he works with archival field recordings of Amsterdam that you can download for free. It's a pity we all can't gather in Amsterdam for ADE this year. I, for one, will miss the afternoons filled with lectures, workshops, and free beer at random in-store events, but we wanted to give those of you both near and far a little sonic taste of Amsterdam that you can explore and manipulate to create your own Amsterdam ADE musical postcard. In this video, Giacomo uses a variety of sounds from Amsterdam, some of which seem pretty special considering the current situation. Something as simple as planes taking off and landing at Schiphol Airport, where you would have arrived, a pretty behind the scenes and weird sound of the Dieren Hotel at the airport, which is where animals in transit are held or taken off planes, put on planes. I don't know. It's a pretty random sound to have in the archive, but we have it. What else? Yeah, of course, you need sounds of Amsterdam Centraal, the main train station where you would have arrived from the airport or by train. You would have gotten on a tram. We got some nice tram sounds too, and you would have taken that tram maybe across the city to your first gig or your hotel or wherever. But one really special sound that Giacomo uses that's both interesting historically and really interesting sonically are the sounds from the old House van Bewaring, which was a prison located at a Leidseplein in Amsterdam, right next to Paradiso, where, well, maybe you would have gone to a gig there. You wouldn't know by looking at it today, but that area was once a prison before it was turned into a shopping center and a Hard Rock cafe. But before it was converted, a field recordist was able to go in and record the sounds of that very special space. The sounds are filled with door slams, keys jingling, walking across metal steps and stairs, all in this very cavernous, metallic, concrete reverb. They're pretty sick sounds, and we hope that you find them interesting. And we're really happy that someone was able to document them before that special space disappeared. And well, that's what Revive's about. It's about looking into sounds of days gone by, exploring them with our ears, and then using our own creativity to turn them into something new and present them to the world once again. We hope you get some fresh ideas from this video and are encouraged to go digging in archives, maybe your local archives, or even just go out and record sounds of your own city to use. So that's it for Revive. Thanks to Ableton, thanks to SAE, thanks to ADE, and we'll see you next year. Over to Giacomo.
Hello guys, and welcome to this instructional video brought to you by ADE, Revive and Ableton. My name is Giacomo and I will be your instructor for this instructional video. I am an SAE teacher, audio engineer, producer, artist under the name Torg, and a long-time collaborator for this Revive project, which is a project made by the National Archive of Sound and Video of the Netherlands to re-instruct people in utilizing archival material for their own production and to make music and also movies and all kinds of stuff. Now, I'm an industrial techno producer, so today I'm going to show you the way that I've built my track, which is an industrial techno track using this kind of archival sounds and this kind of archival material. Now we're gonna first take a quick listen to the track, see how it goes, how it sounds, and then we're gonna break it down in elements and see how the elements are done and what was the sound source and how it was transformed into the element that we are listening to. So let's go first. Let's listen. There's a bit of intro. We're not gonna listen to the entire track. We're just gonna listen to snippets. Intro, then we have quite industrial snare, a break, Now, by listening to the track like this, it seems like a pretty regular track, like kick, bass, hi-hats, everything is there. But I want you to listen briefly to the sources that we are using here. So all the sounds that we start from are these kind of ambient recordings. There are some musical elements in there. Some of them you might find, since some of those are coming, as you can hear from the vocals, are coming from broadcasting. So you might have like documentaries and stuff where there are some little musical snippets that you can take and sample, but most of them are going to be very raw and rough. Ambient recording, they really have to transmute into sounds that you want to use. Now, let's start from the main element from most techno tracks actually. That's going to be the kick. There you go. Now, the kick was made by sampling at wave level a sound of a bell, I-point bell GA, which is this one. It's probably the sound of the bridge when it was going up and down when the ships were coming through. So why a bell to make a kick? Well, bells usually tend to have some kind of FM behavior, so I do enjoy FM percussion and FM kicks, so you can easily find waves inside those samples that kind of reminds us of a slightly modulated sine wave. Now, one thing you want to make sure before editing any of these samples, since some of them might be stereo recordings, make them monophonic. So you can load it into an audio track, go to utility, do a freeze, then I flatten, and that would make it monophonic. It's very, very easy. So that will make it easier to find sample points and looping points. Now, one thing to be quite aware is to always try and sample at the zero crossing. Now here I've been a bit sloppy. Actually, the exact sample point should have been a few dots before, so that you will not encounter clicks when starting or ending that precise sample. Now, in case of looping this way, it doesn't really matter, but if you're looping longer parts, then you are gonna hear a click. So after that we have looped these, the important thing to do is to make it into a kick. Now, what we have here, if you take this one normally and you kind of reset the sampler, you get this kind of synth. At the moment that you start to add pitch envelope, you can make also nice 808s. Very nice. Now I took out the sustain in this case, so it just stays the percussion and the hit of it, and then this is going to a few things. It's getting into a drum bus for extra punch and low end, and then it's going to an auxiliary which contains a distortion unit and a filter so that we get some extra attack from it. There you go. Now this attack is also going to a reverb. As you can hear, you have a little bit of ambient, so it can spread the kick sound all over the track. The bass, on the other hand, is actually a very weird way to do it, because I created an audio track and I fed it directly the kick sound. So there's not really an audio file here, it's just processing the input in real time. And because we are listening to it constantly as we are using the track in input monitoring. Now what we do here is we do audio. We have an audio effect rack which contains two parallel chains. Now the first chain being a sub chain that gives the body, sorry, this one, made with Corpus. Now Corpus is an awesome tool because it will basically simulate your sound going through a resonant body, in this case a membrane, and then I tune the membrane very, very low, so it creates this. Followed by a distortion, which I always like, and then a filter to cut out some of the harsher harmonics. After that, we have actually a rhythmic part. The rhythmic part is made with the same way, just by instead of Corpus we have a delay, and instead of a low pass filter we have a band pass filter, modulated by an LFO. Why? Well, the band pass, because we already have the sub coming from the actual sub layer, and the LFO is to have slightly different sound all the time. If we try and listen to it from, see, it goes up and then down, then up and then down. So it gives some movement to the sound, and it doesn't make it like too steady and too boring, which I usually do not enjoy. So when played together, now on top of that, we are sending two of these into a group, and then the group is going into another parallel distortion, together with a few things to have some extra compression and place the right frequencies on top of the mix. The next sound that gives most of the groove is this percussion here. Now this is a classic example of how awesome some of these samples can be, because it's pretty much the basic sample that I've taken and just applied some distortion to. It's actually a recording of a cellar door of an old jail that was in Amsterdam. This such an awesome sound. This is history. It's literally, this thing does not exist anymore. This sound has been recorded, as seems by reading the name, in 1981. So it's pretty interesting to use sounds that do not exist anymore, because this prison does not exist anymore. I think it's now a theater, and yeah, it's just very nice. It sounds so full, so rich. And from there, I actually had to cut some of this low end, some of this beautiful low end, because I already had plenty. Then I applied some drum bass and sent it to the distortion to have it do this groove. I like to process this sound into sampler, because sampler will allow me to play different pitch. Now the way I came out with this groove was actually through the use of Browser, which is a step sequencer which I really like. Sometimes it likes to not go. You can even sum your MIDI notes and Browser. So you can kind of use it in multiple ways. It's pretty fun because you can just randomize the pattern and the gate and everything. So this is quite rolling, this is quite fun. So you can do, actually I think I'm gonna keep this. You can do quite a lot of things with it. If you wanna have a proper MIDI editing, then you have to create a new MIDI track, feed the input into it, and record the MIDI so that you can actually arrange it properly instead of having to do the automations on the on and off switch of it. Same kind of technique was applied for the snare without the sequencer. So I did find this sound that was pretty rough, which that's what I was really looking for in most of them. And it starts with this very massive crash. This is massive. So I wanted to make a snare though, so I reduced the envelope. So I used it in classic mode, while in this one I used it in one-shot mode. So this one I want to play the sample entirely, no matter if the other sample has been triggered. While this one I really want to shape the envelope in a more percussive way, so that I get it to sound the way I intend it to be. So after that I've added some fuzz, which is some distortion, the drum bass to make it even more percussive and reduce some of the very harsh frequencies, so it gets to sound like these with all together. So that's very metallic, heavy industrial snare, really like that. Now the next three sounds are, for example, another example of how some of these sounds are just good on their own without too much processing going on. So it's these three. So the way I like to program these kind of effects is to have them repeating not every time in the same way. So this repeats every 2 bar, this every 3 bar, and this every 4 bar. Usually I have something repeating after 2.5, 3.5 as well, but I wanted to keep it a bit more simpler for the video. So yeah, that's what it happens. Now in this sound, for example, I use the clip modulation, the clip envelope, to select the exact part that I wanted to hear from this sound. Why? Because it had a nice drone sound together with it, but the main problem was that when you start to add sounds after sounds, eventually the drone just disturbs. So eventually it just gets disturbing. So I killed it, and it just came out this. Is nice and smooth and fades in and fades out quite nicely, because remember, if you didn't know, you can bend your automation curves by holding Alt. Now from here we have the same thing happening in this sound and the same thing happening in this sound. Now this is a sound from Schiphol. Now Schiphol is the airport of Amsterdam, and of course they have been plenty of planes being recorded there. And the fun things of vehicles, recordings of vehicles, is that most likely you're going to have the Doppler effect in your recordings. Now, the Doppler effect is a physical phenomenon where basically you will hear the sound having some kind of pitch modulation, because it goes very fast from one point to another. Very common thing is when you see like from Formula 1 or these MotoGP kind of trucks, and you have the recording coming from a defined point source where the microphone is, and you hear the car or the motorbike goes by very fast. You hear the wow, it's a very famous sound. Most people will recognize it, but they just don't know what it's given by, and it's given by the Doppler effect. So those sounds are very good to use because they are moving already by themselves, and they kind of have a pitch automation that you can already find, like in this case. So the only thing that I did was transposed it down a few semitones. Put it down even more. That's a bit creepier. I liked it like that. Now, these are just very simple way. This is just cutting the sample, putting it there, selecting the right part that you want from it. Like in this case, same thing, same kind of curve as this one. You see, very easy trapeze with banded sides. The other thing is the heads. Now the heads were done in two ways. Now the first one is done by taking a recording of something that is quite drone-ish, like in this case is the background noise of a platform in Schiphol, the airport, so it's probably going to be like something like, and you can use the warping modes that Ableton has to adjust the amount of 16th that it will be retained by reading the sample. Now what happens is that he will try to read the sample in this way, so from left to right, each 16th of time, each 16th of a bar. Now what happens is that I'm telling him through this number here to read less of that. If I would put it on 100, it would sound like this. So just some noise, and then I would put it lower. It will always read like, yeah, much less of that of each 16th, which gives me this shuffling kind of thing. It's very nice if you have like Doppler effect sounds or things that already have a modulation on them, because then you have hi-hats that change over time. The other sound, the other hi-hat, is actually again through the use of simpler again. One of my favorite sounds of the entire sample bank is this sound here. Skipple, it's in the Skipple pack. So it's, there you go, this one. Now this is awesome because it has animal sounds in it. I love animal sounds. And here you have these. So this it's actually a, yeah, it's a proper transient. So you can isolate it with your sampler and then just play it as a hi-hat, and there you go. By playing the different pitches, you get different hi-hats. Same for the open hi-hat. It's literally the same sample, just with the adding of a vocoder. Vocoder is nice because it allows you to have a release time. By using the noise as the carrier, so by basically modulating the hi-hat with noise, then you can control the release of the noise in case the hi-hat does not have enough. So you can add on to it, which is nice. And of course drum bass and Q8, because yeah, drum bass is awesome. Just now one of my favorite sounds of the entire song, which is actually something that I have not even used, but I just made it because it's cool and actually saved it as preset because I'm gonna use it in a lot of my other productions, is another sound taken from the same animal sample. In that sample you will hear a dog. Now I called it bird lead because it reminds more of a bird when processed, but if you take that dog sound and you just loop it or like select it like properly, you add some chorus, it's just awesome. You just play all kinds of melodies. Of course there's reverbs and delay as you can hear. I don't know, I just like it, it makes me happy, and yeah, it's literally the dog like probably crying, poor guy. The other sound that we have, which is actually one of the leads, is the acid sound, this guy. Now I called it acid, it's not really acid, it's actually an FM sound, and it's made with sampler. Now why sampler instead of simpler this time? Because sampler has the opportunity of modulating your sounds with an oscillator. What does it mean is that you can apply frequency modulations to your sound, which means that you basically have a kind of an FM synth in there, which is, yeah, very nice. And it allows me to give that extra attack to the sound, and then to get really nasty afterwards. Now the other this sound here is actually the siren of an ambulance, actually, of an ambulance for animal, but it's an ambulance, so it has a siren. I do like sirens because they actually more or less proper waves, most likely sawtooths, so they are a very good starting point for more sound design. The acid sound is actually going to an auxiliary as well, called FM chorus. Which adds some extra FM, because what the chorus does normally, it would copy your signal, apply an LFO onto the pitch of it, and then you will resound it with the copy, creating this choir effect through the tuning. But if you multiply the rate of the chorus by 20, you have your LFO entering the audible range, which means that you're actually applying frequency modulation, like proper frequency modulation, not just tremolo or vibrato, to your sound. So what you're having is proper FM. so it adds an extra layer. Now one of my favorite functions that live devices have, that Ableton devices have, is the random panning. The random panning is awesome because it allows you to make like all this kind of weird automation where you have the sound spreading all over the place for breaks, for example, and then you shrink it back in the middle for drops, and when you if you wanna have like this kind of drastic change between super wide to narrow, random panning is a very good option to do that. After the acid, what we have is the drones. Now, the drones are made with two techniques. First one is granulator, that is also the one that we hear in the intro and throughout the track. Now, granulator is amazing. It's one of my favorite Max for Live devices, because it basically allows you to play the same sample in multiple points at the same time and move through it. So this allows you to create textures and evolving sounds that you would not be able to create normally with a synthesizer with a normal sampler. That's why it's actually granular synthesis. It's not a sampling technique. It's more of a synthesis technique that has as a starting source a sample instead of an oscillator. Now, the way this works is pretty intuitive. The fun part is to just play with it and get the weird sounds that out of it. But in a few words, you select how big is the looping point, and then you select where is the looping point. What I like to do is to always modulate with LFOs or with random modulators the size of the loop and the position of the looping point, so the sound will move. You see? You see, if I don't play it, you won't see. See, this is the looping point, which is very small, and it's moving throughout the entire sample. It's moving up and down. Now, with the spray, you can actually add extra loop playback points. Of course, then you have the envelopes as a normal synth, a couple of filters. You can do a fan as well, but it's sometimes just fun to find the right sample. I like to have plain samples with the small transients in them, because then you have the sound moving pretty freely, and then it encounters the transient, and it gives this kind of like weird modulation, weird behavior on top, crackles and stuff, which I really enjoy. The other and the last drone, the last sound that we're gonna see today is my pulse stretch drone. Now, as I mentioned before, some of the sounds are coming from broadcasting. So you will have, as for example in the Deeren ambulance, the animal ambulance, the first one in Europe apparently. Since it's coming from broadcasting from the broadcasting, so a documentary, you will have these little like orchestral pieces in the middle.
Hospital.
So you can cut that and sample it. Now, the way that I did it was using Pulse Stretch. Pulse Stretch is one of my favorite free VSTs out there. It's actually an audio effect, so you can drop it in any track, and then you can just drop the sound into it. And Pulse Stretch will stretch it. That's what he does. On top of that, you can add a bunch of effects to it. Harmonics, you can add ratios, which is basically the octaves. You can decide how much noise or how much tone you want to have more organ kind of sounds. You can frequency shift, you can do a bunch of things. Now, this is amazing. This is really, I love Pulse Stretch. I have been using it for years, since a friend of mine showed it to me, and I always kind of try to feed it everywhere. The cool thing of it is that, I mean, you can take the recording as well. You have to record it because you will not be able to play it. You really have to record it. But you can take the recording, resample the recording, do all kinds of cool stuff with it. I'm going to use the computer keyboard for this. You can build stabs with a little bit of this. Made entire tracks with this actually. So you can make like all these kind of weird stubby sounds, or just leave it, as in this case, as a long drone. Now I like to process it with this massive reverb Verbotron, which is a new reverb from Max for Life pack. It's amazing because it's very wide and spacey, and then some chorus to give some modulation and some EQing. And now guys, we are going to actually listen to the track fully, so you get an idea of how it actually sounds when everything is coming together and all the sounds are joined together. Just a quick note before is that I'm gonna navigate some of the plugins so that you can see some of the settings of the EQs and some of the automations maybe, and yeah, there you go. So yeah, then it's a normal outro. Well, guys, I would like to thank again Revive ADE and Ableton to have me here, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I do recommend this exercise because it's a good exercise when it comes to sound design and creativity and getting to know your software, getting to know your samplers or your VSTs if you're using more of these. I find it very challenging and very creative to try and transmute sounds from rough sources into musical instruments. So my recommendation is to my advice is to download these samples from the link in the description, or go to revivethese.org and download all the sample packs that you can. I'm actually created a sample pack myself for industrial techno sounds, which is very nice. There's a lot of bleeps and heavy percussions kind of sounds, an orchestra and everything that you can use and tune at your pleasure. All the sounds are royalty free. And yeah, guys, have fun and have a wonderful and creative life. Bye.